So this whole narrative around replica handbags doesn't seem to be getting bought by some people. And I have found this out by listening to you guys, and in this video I'm going to share what I learned. And I'm also going to share what I think, again for the record, about buying fake and replica handbags. Welcome to you, my name's Dale and this is Dale's Addiction. Today I'm bringing you a bit of a chit chat, a bit of a commentary around what people actually think. A lot of the YouTube discussion at the moment has been brought about by the Catalyst, Thethefakebirkinslayer Instagram account, and boy is that juicy. And if you haven't come across that account yet and you're interested in the luxury buzz, where have you been? I will link it in the description box below. But I guess that's just one of the conversations that's happening at the moment. I keep getting asked to share my opinion on fakes and dupes. I feel like that I've covered it in a few lives and a few Q&A videos, but I thought I'd put it here in one spot. What I did want to do, however, though, is get educated, because just the other day, my husband and I were having drinks with some good friend of ours, people who, objectively, you would call wealthy people. And my friend, who I know purchases genuine luxury items, had a new pair of Chanel sandals, and I complimented her on them, and straight away she said to me, "Oh, thank you, but they're fake." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Yeah, I've recently got into DHgate and I've bought a few things. I bought this Fendi bag, it wasn't really good. I got a Fendi scarf, it's okay, it'll do for my upcoming holiday." And she showed me and I had a look and it looked okay, but if you know the real thing, you know that it's not. And she was like, "I feel a bit icky about wearing it because, you know, I have real things and I know it's fake, but yeah, just trying things out." And from that conversation, I thought, I wonder how many other people, if they're given the opportunity to have an open discussion about it, would share. So I went to Instagram and I created a bunch of polls when I got home. I'd had a few glasses of wine. They weren't the most intelligent questions that I could have asked. However, I asked them and you guys responded very generously. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. And stick around till later on when I share with you what I've learned and what that now means for me in relation to replicas and fakes. Just to be clear, in this video, when we talk about replicas or fakes, we're talking about items that are branded as per a luxury house. They're not dupes where they're inspired by, but they don't have any of the branding or identifying features that would lend you to believe that it is an authentic item. So the first question that I asked on Instagram was, have you ever considered buying a fake luxury handbag? And I was really happy with the fact that people were quite honest in this poll. Even though I can see who votes what, I'm not sharing the respondents on this video because I value the trust that people put in me and the discretion that I have to just give you the big picture. So interestingly, 12% of people said yes and 88% of people said no. Then I said, well, if you've considered it, have you actually gone ahead and bought a fake luxury handbag? 26% of those people said yes, which was 136 votes, which is quite a lot. 64% said no, with 344 votes. And 10% of people said they almost did, but stopped short. And that was 53 votes. So those numbers are pretty significant for a small sample size. My Instagram following is around 5,000 followers. I guess not everyone needs to be subscribed to be able to participate in the poll. But if they got to my stories and participated, I'm counting them as subscribers, followers, whatever we call them. So interesting, right? That quite a few people have purchased fake bags and some have gotten incredibly close but stopped short. And I wanted to then know, well, if you didn't go ahead and do it, why not? I got pages and pages of responses, and I could show you from back here so that you can't see who said what, but these are the screenshots that I have, and each of those has about 6 different responses, and I've got heaps of them. So I got a lot of feedback, and I won't go through all of it here on this video, but I've kind of summarized it for you in terms of what are the key points that come through as to why people have decided not to go ahead. Now, the main reason was this concept of counterfeit, fake, replica bags being unethical. And unethical is a big category. Some of the reasons that people felt it was unethical to support the industry was the narrative around the fact that this industry potentially funds terrorism, that it engages in illicit trading, that it employs people who are unable to negotiate fair pay and conditions for themselves, whether they be children or people who are living in poverty. And then that kind of lends itself to the next topic, which is that they believe it's effectively stealing from the original creator and owner of the design. So that unethical category was a big one, and that was a big chunk of the responses that I received. The next category of responses around why people wouldn't buy these pieces was really around personal values. A lot of people said that because they have genuine pieces, they would be worried about the judgment they might receive from people if they were picked, as in if somebody discovered that, oh, that's not a genuine article handbag, and then doubted them as a person and their other pieces and put them in the category of, well, everything's fake and not genuine. People talked about feeling icky, shady, and feeling like they had stolen something. So even if nobody else knew, they wouldn't feel good about carrying those pieces. Some people said that even if they had bought them, they know they wouldn't carry them because of the feeling that it would give them. And I can certainly relate to that, and it's not putting them in the same category at all, but I've previously talked about the fact that I won't buy contemporary bags anymore, not because they're inferior, because I know that my personal preference is that if I have a similar piece that I can wear that's a luxury bag, I'll choose it. I just know that about myself. And even if I've got a beautiful contemporary option, I'll still pick the other thing because I just enjoy wearing it more. So I get that that would be even more magnified if you're choosing between a genuine and a non-genuine article. Another thing that came up in terms of the personal thing was around lying to yourself. The fact that you're not potentially the person who you thought you were. So the lying to yourself piece came up quite a few times. And then the other part of that was questioning whether or not you were buying and carrying that for everyone else to think that it was something, rather than for yourself, for you to feel something or to put an outfit together. And there was this real conflict around, who am I doing this for? Like, if I cannot purchase the genuine article and I have decided to purchase a fake, is that so that I can belong? And is that for others then? Or is that genuinely for me and my happiness? So that was something that popped up quite a bit. Some people, like me, talked about the in-store experience and that luxury was not actually having the piece, but luxury was the whole experience. And for me, that's absolutely a big part of why I love buying luxury handbags. And I don't think, and I've spoken about it on a recent video, that just having even if it's a genuine luxury handbag, turn up in a brown cardboard box with no frills because it's a cheap deal, it doesn't cut it for me. That's not luxury. I know that's not the same for everyone, but a lot of people talked about the fact that they enjoy the luxury experience. It's not just the article. Some people talked about the fact that they respect the brand, and you know, I've heard this a lot in relation to Hermes and the journey, and people buying into the journey because they respect the brand and the heritage of the brand. So respect for the brand came up quite a bit. People talking about it's tacky and it doesn't meet with their personal standards. People said that they would prefer to purchase a non-branded quality bag, even a dupe, before they would purchase a counterfeit bag. And then finally, this comment about quality. And we're going to come back to quality a little bit later on, because there's some very interesting information I've come across in relation to quality and counterfeits. The next question I asked is, if you have, or you almost have, purchased a fake luxury bag, why did you do it? Now this one was really interesting, and I think this is where a lot of the learning came to me, and potentially there's some more conversation to be had about some of these reasons. One of the main ones was people were young, and a lot of people had purchased on holiday in some of the Southeast Asian countries or in Venice and other areas in Europe, but most people said that they were young, and I couldn't afford the real thing. So those things kind of went hand in hand. And the other version of that was I was young and uneducated about the impact of that industry on society. That came up over and over again. Now, the reason that I want to touch on the affordability piece is, as I spoke about before, the level of quality in different counterfeit options that are available on the market, I have learned, varies significantly. From the dodgy, wrong colour, poorly printed monogram that doesn't line up with bad glazing, to one-to-one perfect replicas of Birkins for thousands of dollars. So it's interesting how you can still choose to buy counterfeit and spend thousands of dollars, or buy counterfeit and spend $20. Another key reason that people bought these pieces was particularly around Hermes bags. People mentioned that if you can never go into the boutique and see one of these pieces in the flesh and try it on, being able to purchase something that is an exact replica or close to gives you an idea about whether or not you want to invest in this journey, or you want to invest in buying one from the consignment market for, again, another markup. And the same came up with Chanel classic flaps. So I guess that's why there's a lot of intelligence and a lot of workmanship that goes into doing really high quality copies of those particular bags from Hermes and Chanel, because people don't get to see them. And so would you take the risk to spend all that money and it not be a fit for you, or would you trial it out first? What do you think about that? Another interesting point about why people did go ahead and buy replicas was they didn't believe that the original was worth the money. And there are a couple of examples given, and I'll just summarize them by, they were trend pieces. So they could be seasonal bags such as shearling. They could be bags such as a certain woman's name that has woven leather. Those sorts of pieces where people just thought it wasn't worth going to the boutique and spending the retail price. They were pretty much holding their value in the pre-loved market. So they were pieces, as far as they were concerned, that weren't worth the money to them, and they would seek a high quality replica to be able to enjoy that piece for the season or the period of the trend, and then not have invested a great deal of money in it. The concept of not spending the money to make another company rich, but rather saving that money and investing it yourself to increase your wealth, was another item that came up a few times. And for me, that's a really interesting one, because I think that and it kind of aligns to that famous article in The Cut about how self-made wealthy women were not buying the genuine article Hermes bags because they knew what money was worth, whereas women that had come from old money or family money were more likely to buy authentics. Now, I don't have an opinion on that because I don't know enough people in that circle to be able to provide any commentary, but how this comment relates to that, to me, that is making yourself wealthy potentially at somebody else's loss. And I don't know if that's an ethical way to create wealth. And that is something I'm not quite got my head around yet. Now, depending on your social group, a couple of the comments were everyone does it, and so it's accepted. It's a social norm with the people that I am friends with or the social groups that I hang with. So yeah, that's why I do it. I feel safe and secure doing it, so I will buy replicas and I have no qualms doing it. A couple of people talked about the overrated and overhyped bags and saying they just wouldn't pay recommended retail price for those, and particularly in relation to Louis Vuitton and toiletry pieces. So saying, look, I don't think it's worth paying the price. I just happen to have one here of something that is potentially going to get wet, get watermarks, it's going to have things spill in it. I'll get something that looks exactly the same, but I'm not spending $1,500 on it. The same with the Neverfull. The Neverfull came up a lot because the Neverfull is a workhorse bag, saying, look, that is a bag that I'm going to stuff full of things. I'm going to throw it around. I want to take it to the beach. I'm not going to spend 3,000 Australian dollars on that bag. I would prefer to buy a replica, and if I buy 10 of those, it still wouldn't add up to that price. There were some really touching responses to this question around I wanted to indulge in the fantasy. I wanted to see what it felt like to think of myself carrying these sorts of bags. And those are things that I can really relate to as being someone who never grew up around that. And whoever answered that question, I would love to know whether or not they found that that was something that they would like to invest in for themselves down the track, or whether or not that hit the spot and they didn't need any more. FOMO came up quite a bit around cultural norms again, so not the cultural norms I spoke about earlier in the fact that people thought it was just normal and fine to purchase replicas, but wanting to fit in if everyone around you is carrying a luxury handbag and carrying it like it doesn't mean anything, like it's just normal, wanting to fit in with that, and that's why they had purchased replicas. One of the things that I was really struck by was the fact that people felt they could get a one-to-one replica where the packaging and all of the inclusions were like for like for a fraction of the price, and saying, you know, why would I purchase the real thing when it is such a rip-off? And so having a mixture of genuine and fake pieces, but deciding what they thought was a reasonable price to pay for those was something that motivated them to purchase replicas. So the final question that I asked was, based on the responses of the other questions, and I posted it about like 12 hours after the other questions and the huge amount of response that I got back, was, if you have bought or considered buying fakes, do you believe that fakes fund illicit trade, child labour and terror, as I started at the beginning of this video? Only answer it if you have purchased fakes. 66% of people said that they believed it, and 34% of people said that they didn't. And this is what really struck me, because this is the overwhelming narrative around why fakes and replicas are bad and should not be, those industries should not be supported. More so than the idyllic, it's stealing from a big corporation, it's not the right thing to do, those sorts of things. This real ethical debate around purchasing. So I asked people to expand on why they didn't believe the narrative. Here's the responses that I got. It's providing jobs for children where they don't have to be sold on the streets. So it's not ideal, but it's better than the alternative. And the originals fund more illegal stuff. It's just that they have money to hide it well. So an accusation there, where's the evidence for that? But I guess the people who've responded to that have said, well, where's the evidence to the contrary? So I'll summarize this because there's like 5 comment boxes, but this person has said they don't believe the stories, but also isn't it better for these children to have work than the alternative, which could be less safe and less humane work, if you get what I'm reading, and that there are other big companies that let's just say people who are putting people into space at the moment own, located in these countries, who also have unacceptable working conditions. But what are we doing about that? Because someone or something suffers with all commercialism, so nothing is faultless. Why don't you believe the narrative? It's not that I don't believe it, it's that I don't believe that luxury brands are using fair labour. So, interesting point. Someone is always trying to make money. I think the ratio of truly criminal is the same as with any fashion business. There are people just trying to make a buck, and sometimes they may fund illegal activities, as in any other industry. This one, and a lot of people filled up a lot of question boxes to provide context for their answers in terms of believing it or not. If I don't believe it, I couldn't answer the question because I feel it's yes and no. I think the good quality fakes come straight out of the factories that make them, especially LV. But then the shitty looking fakes you buy off the street in Thailand, I think yes, there has to be child labour and underpaid work happening. So that quality of fakes argument comes up again. So not all fakes are deemed unethical. It's just funding normal living for those less fortunate. People know not everyone can afford it. So a lot of people saying it's not ideal, but it's better than the alternative for these children or people living in poverty. This one, I haven't seen any news articles that say fakes fund child labour. There have been a number of articles, and I guess it depends on what you call news. There's been a lot of articles in fashion magazines and in pullouts of major newspapers. I've watched a TED talk from somebody who investigates the counterfeit trade, but I think people are doubting the legitimacy of the media reporting on it until it's like a BBC investigation or a Washington Post investigation. It seems like people are doubting the integrity of the media around counterfeits. Where are the receipts? I haven't seen any actual evidence, just hearsay. This is a typical stereotype about manufactured items from any Asian/Pacific country. Many factories are family owned, and it sounds like something luxury brands made up to scare people, which is an interesting one. You know, there has been stories of counterfeit from way back, which is effectively why Louis Vuitton have this monogram pattern to start with, because the damier ebene was being counterfeited. So potentially there's, some legitimacy to that claim. One person saying, I don't believe it because I hope the world isn't so cruel. Someone saying, I believe it, but I'm not naive enough to think the real things are made ethically. So they're saying, I don't see a difference if you're making an ethical argument against counterfeit and genuine articles. A lot of people not believing that the big brands have the conditions. So why is it any different? Because like everything else, I feel like it's a generalization and also sensationalized. The large brands also have alleged human rights violations, like tech companies in certain African countries, and another person saying there's no hardcore evidence. A lot of those, I guess, are legitimate reasons why these particular people do not believe the narrative around counterfeits funding all of these illicit activity. For me, what have I learned from asking these questions of people? That there is more to counterfeit items than meets the eye. There are different levels of quality, and potentially where they are made and the working conditions of the people making them could also be on a continuum from, dodgy sweatshop to typical luxury factory manufacturing experience. Again, if I was to ask for receipts for that, I probably wouldn't get any, but this is what I'm learning from the conversation. The other thing, that there are some groups of people where it's culturally normal to just purchase these counterfeit pieces because it's fashion, not because they subscribe or buy into brand affiliation in terms of the respect for the brand, the heritage of the brand, and those sorts of things. So that was kind of interesting to me. A lot of people making the argument around the fact that they bought them when they couldn't afford the real thing and now they can. There's an element of pride attached to purchasing the real thing, but also that people who buy the real thing are open to buying counterfeit items if they don't believe that the purchase price is appropriate to the timelessness of the piece. And then there's just it's wrong, it's stealing, it's against what I believe in. I can't pull off this kind of deception to myself or others. Versus it's just a bag, it does a job, and I don't care if it's the real thing or not. I'm going to wear it and I'm going to enjoy it. So what do I think now that I've been on this journey of discovery? I've made no secret in the past, and I feel pretty consistent about it, that I won't even buy mock croc. When I was growing up, I had a school principal tell me that I didn't belong because of where I grew up. And I think at that moment in time, I was probably 14 years old, and I sought never, ever, ever to be questioned about whether I belonged anywhere ever again. And for me, that meant that I studied, and I'm going to get to the point, from when I technically finished school at 18, and I didn't stop until I was about 38 years old. And I didn't attend any of my graduations for my qualifications. I didn't put my degrees on the wall. I didn't put post-nominals on my business card or my email signature. It was about me feeling like I was legitimate, that I, if ever questioned, I had answers, and that I did belong and I could prove it. And I think that that mentality for me lends itself to all areas of my life. Whether it's down to the brand of ketchup that I buy in the store, or whether I buy luxury items from luxury boutiques, I'm the person that wants to go to the boutique. I'm the person that wants to shop. I'm the person that wants to look around and touch and smell and try things on, and I want that experience. To me, that is luxury. It is not luxury to me to just have the thing and wear it and feel like I belong by association because I'm wearing the bag that everyone else is wearing. I didn't have money as a kid, yet I did not buy fake Doc Martens. I saved and saved and saved, and I got the real deal Doc Martens because they meant something. Some people talk about luxury as, certain achievements, or they buy luxury to celebrate certain achievements in their life. I don't. I'm someone who indulges in it when I see things that I enjoy. But I also know that I didn't start buying luxury really until I was 30. And I was established in my life, and I could purchase luxury things without having to compromise on whether or not they were legitimate or not, because I waited until the right time. I am someone who's a little bit more open to risk. I will buy the real thing and not know if it's going to work for me, and learn the lesson, have the experience, because I'm buying it because I can do that, as in I can take that risk. I understand that if it doesn't work out for me and I sell it, I'll probably take a hit, on the money that I've invested, but you know, that's not a normal outcome for me. And I realize not everybody is that risk averse. I don't judge people who I see out and about in the community wearing what I can see to be very obvious counterfeit pieces. I just notice it, and that's it. I don't think any less of that person, or oh my God, do you know that you're funding this or that or what have you. I do still find it interesting that people who can afford to buy the genuine articles choose not to, and that there's this war against the man and the corporation, because from my perspective, most people who are buying luxury are the man. You work for a big corporation. You draw your income from a company that may not sell luxury but sells something else and is extraordinarily successful. So I don't get that argument about winning. I think that our motivations for buying into luxury certainly can be very different for different individuals, and it's not right or wrong in terms of what your motivation is, but how you conduct yourself and how you have a sense of comfort with your decisions, really you can only be the judge of that. Another thing that I want to add about stories I've heard with relation to counterfeit items is one of the other reasons that I'm not for them is because not everyone has the best of intentions with regard to them. I don't believe in making yourself wealthy at the cost of somebody else. And when people either sell an unsuspecting person something that is counterfeit and they tell them it's genuine, authentic, and that person finds out when they go to sell that piece that it is not authentic, they have been scammed. And that is just a horrible, horrible thing for a person to go through, to spend their hard-earned money and maybe be new to this world of luxury and to be scammed, to think that they've purchased a genuinely authentic article to find out sometime later that it's fake. That's not okay. The other thing that is not okay is when people exchange goods with luxury stores and they send fake items back when they were sent the original genuine article in the first place. And I've heard of this happening a couple of times. I saw a video recently where Marquita, and I will link her video below, thanks to Gene for sharing that, I'll link his channel below, had overheard a conversation in Louis Vuitton where somebody was trying to exchange a counterfeit item for a genuine item. So go and check out her video if you're interested in that one and you haven't seen it. Tanya from 408 California 408 used to be on YouTube, now is just on Instagram, purchased a pair of Chanel combat boots from a concession at a department store, looked at them a few times and thought they were a bit off, and she's got a good eye for detail, and discovered that they were not the genuine article, that somebody had purchased the genuine article, returned fakes, and then the fakes hadn't been picked up on the return and the fakes had been shipped out to her from Chanel. Now that is scary, and that is not okay. And sadly, if people were just purchasing counterfeits because they either didn't want to pay the original price or couldn't pay the original price and just wanted to participate in the trend or enjoying the look of a particular item, that's one thing. But it's certainly another thing to purchase those things and then try and play a person, an individual, a private person who's just purchasing from a consignment store or some kind of marketplace or even a luxury store to profit from buying your counterfeit, to try and get the real deal and then potentially sell the real deal for a profit and just keep flipping these counterfeit items. That's not okay. And unfortunately, I think those sorts of people are probably ruining it and creating a really bad taste in the mouths of the people who would not buy fakes, because they're the stories that we hear about people who buy fakes, much more so than a harmless person who just wants to watch their pennies. It's one of those conversations that I know can press buttons, that can draw accusatory remarks, where people can get really emotional about it. For me, I have not and will not purchase replicas, because for me that's the opposite of what luxury is. Pure and simple. What are your thoughts if you didn't respond to the Instagram poll? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Have you learned anything from the insights that I've shared in this video today, which has been quite a long one? And if you've gotten this far, if you could leave the little money bag emoji in the comments as well, that'll let me know that you made it through this epic video. If you've liked the video, please give me a thumbs up, and if there's other topics that you'd like me to explore with you, I'd love to know about those too. I put out videos on Wednesdays and Sundays, sometimes some extras. I'd love to see you back here, so please subscribe if you haven't already by clicking the red button and hitting the bell notification. And I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now.